started. Um, so when did we start reveal the cards? It's been a few weeks, and we got over 50%, even more, revealed. Um,
Right.
so do we want
Been
to
quite
share?
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
been quite interesting. So the reveal, we're part of a wider um, company. So actually, we really want to reveal things when people have got the time to focus on it, and we don't want to overshoot. Some of the really big things that are happening in the ecosystem at the moment as well, and so we've been working with all the teams around the announcements that are coming out and the airtime required so that we can make the reveals as special as possible for everyone. Um, there is, like it's very exciting for us to do the reveals. We've worked a long time on producing the story, and I think the story is behind the memberships, the story behind ATEM, and the story behind the game is something that we have a vision of growing and developing that story over years to come. So that like it's not just a game that you can clock in 36 hours. It's not. Um,
Mm.
as that it can continue doing. So setting the stage now, and every word that we publish in the law is going towards setting that first sort of novel. And when I say
Mm.
first novel, the the future novels should be built from that first novel and from the law created and from the opportunities and the doors open from that. So we want to make this special and we want to make it fun. We've got a few goals to with the club memberships, and the memberships are all super special, and they're a lot of people ask, is unrevealed better than revealed? Actually, like there are some very rare cards coming up, and I do have to say that they are very rare, but they're all one membership is a membership, and the traits included in them, um, they will affect the assets that are distributed from having the card membership. So if you wanted to form strategies around that, like I'm sure like there are already strategies existing out there, but um, take every single trait seriously, and
Mm.
if even the names of them could be quite cryptic, but um, you know, also we're not going to we're not going to predict the future for you. We want you to predict the future yourself. So like some things that we may know, we're not going to release as information, because part of the game is actually like preparing your strategy for what you're reading into it and how you're doing things. But having said that, we really want to encourage everyone not to gamble. Like this is not a gamble. This is a game. So we want you to have fun, grow value in the assets that you have. We're building as much value as we can into the membership, into the club, and into the game. And we're creating a game that's decentralized. So it means that the guys with the membership cards, they are the distribution point for assets going forward. So rather than being a centralized distribution. So it's the whole club here that promotes this game out to the world. It's the whole club that lets the rest of the world in. And producing assets through the membership cards is the key to that community growth, that decentralized growth. And including other communities. You know, we're super lucky that small communities have been forming within ATEM, and it's, you know, we were a bit nervous before we started, but we're no longer nervous at all. We're an amazing group of people joining ATEM Car Club, and we're seeing some really cool teams forming out of that, and we're going to be investing and focusing on building those teams. Sorry for talking too much, but the reveals are cool because you learn a little bit about the lore, you learn a little bit about the design and the stories.
Probably the environments as well.
And
off
also
the backgrounds.
the environments.
Yeah.
And you're learning each reveal. You'll learn a little bit about our partnerships within the ecosystem as well. So all those things are super important now. Are you know, starting from the epicenter and building the stage for the novel, for the first novel.
Yeah. No, very well said.
Any questions on reveals?
Are we getting people up right now for the
Yeah.
question? Okay, sure. Let me have a look.
Mr. Atari.
Hello.
Hey, welcome.
Hey guys,
Hey.
I promised I wouldn't come up on stage, but I was like, let me just break the ice, and I have a legit question.
Okay.
Welcome.
Hey, I'm definitely playing the game, and I'm, you know, taking my own strategy. When you said, "What do we think about the reveal?" Without giving anything away, can you say how many more different colored cards? And I just want to make sure I don't run out of ETH. Is my concern, like how many different kinds of cards, or are you talking about, like, I know you can only explain so much, so it's hard to even get up here and ask you, but if you can expand at all, and if you can, I understand is it based off the color of the cards? Well, not any lower perspective, but maybe how much more we can expect out of different types.
So the material of the cards is a super important factor as to what in-game benefit they have. But we can't tell you the specific in-game benefit for the color of the cards. Also, the color of the nanobot is quite important as to what traits are likely or are more likely to be present when a nanobot makes something in the future. Our nanobots, in our lore, that our nanobots make the asset. So,
Nanobot plays important.
those are two kind of hints to strategy. But there are also some other really important traits that we've included in the cards. And those traits give us interesting variables for how things play out in the future and how additional value that we may not have even thought of yet can be worked into the game. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm just here trying to not pull triggers. I mean that metaphorically on OpenSea. But yeah, guys, thank you, as always, and yeah, stoked.
No worries. Cheers, man. Thanks
Thanks,
for the
Atari.
question.
Cheers, guys. Cheers, team. Bye.
Okay, I just put.
Hey.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Amir.
Hi, guys. So I think what the last guy was trying to ask, and well, it's a question that I have, is how many? Can you say how many more, approximately how many more card types will be revealed? Whether it's like 5 more card types, 10 more, like just so we know how many different card types there are roughly.
Just, do you have a count, Karen?
Do you want me to actually say it? There are One. There's about 6. Yeah. About
6
6 to
remaining.
go. Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Great. And then this is doesn't have to do with the reveal, but just more like what's the next steps? Like, I know the reveal is happening, and then is it after the reveals? After some time, there will be cars or tracks, or what's kind of the overall plan? I guess is the question.
So we've announced 3 things. One of them is that we've already started, which is the genome mining for Gen 2 brains. Because we wanted to build a club that can add value to its users, we took 100% of the mint proceeds in Asto token. And we've staked 100% of the mint of this project. So that's all the assets that were contributed by every member who minted. We've staked them into the Asto genome mining, so into the Linaris machine to produce Gen 2 brains for the club. Every member of the club, so everyone with a membership, once those brains are ready, every member with a membership will be able to claim a brain. You'll probably need to pay the gas to claim it, but that we'll build the mechanic around that, and we'll build a really efficient contract for that to happen. So, and once that's done, that whole infrastructure for claiming the brains and club minting the brains that technology will exist for the future. The next step that the next thing we've announced is cars, and you can see the cars that we leak, and you can see there's a lot we can't share as well, because we've got some massive partnerships tied into the cars that we're producing as well. So we have to be really respectful of other people's names, and we also have to make sure that when we announce someone, that we give them the respect and the welcome and the attention that they deserve. So right now is not the time to do that, because we're going through the reveal process, we're going through the club establishment process. So there will be a major car claim for every membership, and that will be hopefully later this year. Everyone with a membership card can claim their first car pack, and the car packs are planned to have parts or modifications or some cosmetics inside them, and a car, or at least one car in the claim for each claim. Some memberships will have 2 cars in the claim. So that's also a little bit of alpha for you. But that claim will happen. We believe it'll be later in this year, and the assets that we're building are metaverse assets. They're not just ATEM Car Club assets. So we're building these cars to a game standard and also a film standard, so that they can be used. If you own that asset and you customize that asset, you can actually use that in as many applications and other people can create as many games as they like, as they can, to use your NFT. You can use your NFT in. And we're really open to that, and we really encourage that idea, so that your NFT that you own becomes more usable and special and valuable as utility is delivered. I think that's sort of the third thing, tracks. Okay, the tracks are a part of the racing game, and it's extremely complex part of the game where we want the community to be able to develop their own track and mint that as a NFT that's usable by the game. Now, we're still working through all of the technology to make that happen, and we're still developing that. So it's something that we're working on, and we don't have an exact date for that yet, or a predicted date. But as soon as we can, we'll be delivering those track packs out there. We've got some really smart people working on that right now.
Great. That answers most of my questions. Just the last thing. So the tracks will come after the game is available. Am I understanding that correctly?
There's going to be lots of games involved in the whole ATEM game. It's not just a car versus car racing game. There are lots of one of our ethos is that we want to create environments to enjoy the assets in. We want to create communities that need each other and interact with each other, so that you're not just alone on a computer screen looking at OpenSea, a picture on OpenSea. I don't think that's the future of the metaverse. I think that belonging to a car club should mean that you're interacting with people as a natural part of what you're doing. We're building technology to foster a real life car culture environment into a digital environment, and making it as real as possible, making it as human as possible. When we say reality, we mean digital experience is part of your normal reality now. It's not something that you go to the movies to see anymore. It's something that's part of your normal everyday life, and it's becoming more and more important as the technology is developed.
Thank you for all the answers. Appreciate it. I'll let someone else get on the stage.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Silo, I
Good
have
questions, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Hi, Silo.
Silo.
Hey,
Hello. How's it going?
Good. I love the nose.
Yeah, it's a cool little thing that we decided.
That is one sick
really
fluff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my forever fluff actually. If I was gonna sell anything, it wouldn't be this one because obviously I don't want to be holding all the fluffs for the rest of my life, but this is the one that I want to hold. So I'm just happy I get to represent it through Atom Car Club. Anyway, so I guess I wanted to ask a question about the production of an AI game. Is it because it is a new type of game? Will that mean that it's going to require more work? Because I'm wondering if game development is actually easier because you're not focusing on the player playing the game. It's more the AI playing the game. I guess could you answer, if you could answer any questions relating to that?
I'll answer the question anyway. We're building new technology, so every layer of that technology has to be created from scratch. And from what I can understand, the traditional gaming industry, there's not a lot of interoperability between games because each game is built in its own extremely complex, extremely bespoke database. And because of that structure of building the games, even the same manufacturer of games has very little interoperability between other games that they produce because they're all such bespoke, massive databases that work differently from each other. So as that's one thing that we're super, super, super lucky about, is being part of the ASM and Fluff World ecosystem, because they are building those layers. They're building the commercial layer. They're building the AI protocols. They're building the game presentation layers, and they're building that in a actually interoperable way, where assets you own are actually treated at the same standard, are accepted into multiple databases, and compatible with multiple environments and things like that. And so that's, building new stuff is hard, and it takes focus and commitment, and that's something that we're really happy to be part of from a larger ecosystem side of things. But those things aren't going to stop us from producing other parts of the game. So some parts of the game need that hard stuff. But other parts of the game don't need that. So other parts of the game that are just to do with your asset and interacting with your asset and figuring that asset and using that asset and in the club environments and stuff like that. Those things are not hard, and we'll be delivering those things along the lines and as iteratively as possible, along with the story. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah. No, that's pretty well. Yeah, you pretty much covered all of it. I guess another question. You guys have been working on this concept for at least 8 months, from what I understand. Are you guys hiring more people? Like, what's your team development size look like, and is it expanding, or are you keeping it? And is it interconnected with ASM?
Yeah, good question. We are hiring. Up until now, we've been lucky to utilize the centrality team, the bug team, the NFL team, and the ASM team. But we are building our own team out to own the outcomes that we're producing for the club. So we're really excited about building our own team, but we are going to be, if you can imagine it as like, our team is just a small part of the big team. So we're not letting go of the big team. We're always going to work together. We're always going to share resources, share expertise, but we'll have our own, named people that are building specifically here and owning the outcomes specifically here. So I look forward to welcoming more of those people into the club and into the community as well.
Awesome. So, are you a substrate developer, or are you more the overseer of the projects and have the idea, but you hire the coders themselves?
I'm not a developer as part of my job, but I've been in this technology since 2017 and been across everything from centrality and plug and NFL and ASM have produced since that time. So I may not be writing the code, but I'm really involved in the idea of that. And so, and there is more to it than just the code as well. So I'm involved in other parts of the organization.
Yeah, I guess like with auto blockchain, there's the whole KYC creation. I'm sure there's probably a lot of legal requirements and things that you have to probably go through beyond just being a decentralized identity protocol.
That's right. That's right. And Atom Car Club is something that's really close to my heart because car culture is like the best part of my life, other than Web3. I'm really glad to be able to bring this together with everyone here who's obviously just as passionate.
Yeah. So would it be safe to say that you guys are planning on using the Futureverse layer? And I guess this is more of just a broad question relating to that, if you don't mind me asking. What are some of the benefits of using Substrate and that technology that you find better than other blockchains?
I think maybe this isn't the forum to go into that specifically, but
Oh, good. Oh, good. I
key
was just throwing it out
the
there.
key thing is that there are a lot of pieces of technology that go into a stack that creates a consumer end-to-end experience. And Futureverse is the only reliable business out there, team out there, developers out there that are capable of, or currently actually building that whole stack. I think that we're getting on the right train, if you get what I mean.
Awesome. So I guess what you're basically saying is it's allowing everything you want to happen be possible through this technology. It's exciting to be a part of it. Thank you. That's
And
all.
I
I guess
think
that's all my questions today. But yeah.
that's cool. That's awesome. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you. All right, now we have Board on the stage. Welcome.
Hello, is this the real board Elon Musk?
It seems like there's a trend right now in fake versions of popular, identities right now. So I can confirm that this is the real fake board Elon Musk.
The voice sounds real.
Yeah, Jeff and I have, I think, talked enough where he can recognize me at this point. But I'm very based, but I'm a big fan of this community and really happy that you're bringing your second passion of car culture, to all of us. And had more of like I guess a philosophical game question, and hopefully doesn't sound too leading or like I'm fishing for information. But I think a lot of us have assumed that the game or games that come out of this culture are going to be racing focused. And I think most games that involve cars are racing focused, which makes sense. But I one of my sort of one area of gaming that I'm really passionate about that I think doesn't get a lot of attention is kind of the non-racing car genres. And if you think about games like Twisted Metal, like Vehicle Combat or Rocket League, where cars replace athletes, or to some degree even like a Grand Theft Auto, where you spend a lot of time in sort of like an MMO, but in a car, like that's really exciting to me. And I'm just curious at a high level, like is that something that you guys have considered, sort of any like non-racing applications of either the AI or something that you would like to see the community build?
Actually, a really cool question, and one thing that really impressed me about games in my lifetime, and like I've been lucky to go from Warcraft 1 through to WoW, and from Chrono Trigger through to um, Final Fantasy 15 and Final Fantasy Online, and spent a lot of time in those types of games where where the game has developed, the story has grown, and the lore has become bigger than one person, and the bigger than one person can ever consume. And that's our vision. Although we don't need to, if we make things interoperable, if we make it as easy as possible for other people to develop and utilize the assets that you guys own, we think that so much more than what our game studios, what our contracts that we produce, what our product managers and designers and creators, what they can imagine. We think there's so much more than that that can be created and imagined and integrated into a game, if you imagine it as all one game. And I'm seeing a lot of ideas come through. Personally, I would love it that if you playing Adam and configuring your car, that you have to drive it to go and get a part. That, parts don't just magically download to your car. Or if you wanted to trade with people, that you actually met up in a location, you went to it, you actually physically went to an auction house. There was nothing stopping in World of Warcraft. There was nothing stopping him from putting the auction house into a icon in front of your screen. It was a logical choice for them to make you travel to a place to view that sort of auction and to see what other people were offering. And I think that if we do things right and create a digital experience for people, that we will inspire people to create things like Grand Theft Auto, like combat. And I know that there are a few people that have voiced it in chat before about having some kind of combat card. And in reality, it's just digital physics. You could take your Atom car model that we produce and put that into a game scenario where it gets beaten up and destroyed in certain ways. It's never going to affect the original asset, but it's definitely going to look like it has done in the game. So, and the game memory. So, I think that's possible, and I think that what we see get created will be what people want the most. Does that make sense?
It does. I really appreciate that, and I'm excited to go after your vehicle once the battle arena is.
I'm gonna be making like my vehicle like God mode, right?
Fair enough. Thank you.
I also wanted to shout out to the board team for the generous prize they offered to give away for people who participate on the racing rig at the event. So yeah, thank you so much. That's so lovely, and I think that will be so special for whoever is going to win that prize.
Yeah, we really appreciate the partnership that Board Box has offered to Atom Car Club, and we really believe in the vision that you guys have to bring, the NFT gaming or the Web3 gaming to a new audience. And we know that that's a hard job to do, and you supporting us so much and us supporting you is what I think the metaverse is all about.
Yeah, absolutely happy to do it, and we were, honored to work with you guys, and yeah, excited to give the first prize winner an original NES from your IRL competition. We'll be very careful to make sure we find a working edition of Nintendo Entertainment System to ship out. Pumped to see pictures that come from that.
Amazing. I think it's the most exciting prize out of all of the prizes, and that sim looked like a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we move on to
What's the next
our
subject, Saber?
it's a should we announce a partnership with Unlimited Customs?
Oh yeah, awesome. So you may notice that we've got J-UC on the call. A new face and a new voice. Hey Joe.
Yeah, hello. How we going?
Good. So I just wanted to introduce a good friend of mine and also someone who is going to be really important to the ATEM Car Club. Joe is expert in vehicle customization from kind of a wide range of different vehicles as well. And he has a business called Unlimited Customs, which is a business set up to help people into their dream cars. Joe is going to be part of the ATEM Car Club, and all members will have access to Joe and his team and his their knowledge and their expertise and their networks in real life car questions and in real life car support and also project support and we don't want to get too separated on the digital side from real cars, and just wanted to make that a real strong part of the club. So, questions, Joe? Do you want to tell us how you got into sort of the car culture and also the profession itself?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been modifying and building cars for the last 15, coming up 16 years. I got in as quite a young fella. So I was building and rebuilding engines when I was kind of 16, 15, 16. I started doing manual swaps, just making cars go fast, making cars sound cool, kind of thing. Really, the reason I actually got into cars was I actually had a love for electronics. I used to do quite a lot of electronics when I was younger, pull things apart, put back together, build robots, that kind of stuff. So it kind of led into cars. I used to love fitting out sound systems, that kind of thing, and it kind of grew from there to, hey, what's this engine and how can we make it better, kind of thing.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit about the vision for Unlimited Customs.
Yeah, so Unlimited Customs, we don't just want to be the one-stop shop that you can go to get anything done by your car, but we also want to create a brand that everyone knows about, and we can put our feelers out and help people like the ATEM Car Club around the world. People modify their car around the world. It's not just about a one-stop shop or one area, and then eventually grow that to a nationwide size business.
Awesome. I know that you've got a lot on your plate at the moment, so Joe is taking over a new workshop in Auckland next week. So he's really busy. He's got a bunch of really exciting, really glued up staff who are going to be spending their time in our Discord in a special channel. So we're going to open up a channel where people can sort of jump in and ask the Unlimited Customs team for advice or for help or just generally ask questions. And they're going to be there and sharing their time and expertise with the club. And lots more plans and lots more to come on the Unlimited Custom side of things. So watch this space.
Cool.
Any questions on that? Or
Oh yeah, we got or I've invited you on stage.
Hey.
Hi, how you guys
Oh,
doing? Yeah, this is
good.
actually good timing. My question is about the in real life side of Atom Car Club. So,
Right.
and it's actually perfect that you just introduced uh, unlimited customizations, I think it was.
Unlimited customs, yeah.
Unlimited customs. Um, so, one of the great parts about this Atom Car that we're all excited about is the fact that there will be real cars in the real world that we will all be somewhat a part of. So, in my thinking about how this is going to go, and then hopefully you can kind of just talk a little more about how you envision this going, is kind of having it centrally located in New Zealand, where actually a significant portion of the community actually lives. So, even though that's not thought of as a hub usually, it probably is the best hub for this community. But potentially expanding that onto other continents in some trusted way. And then the second part of that question was, I guess, will that happen? And the second part of the question is, will the members, like once an allotment of money that can go towards the acquisition of a new vehicle, it's kind of a dream that you would then lobby for, sort a short list, and have the community vote on which vehicle we should all use that allotment of funds to add to the physical collection of the Atom Car Club. I don't know if that's in the works, but just kind of gauging your idea on that.
So we are building out the community. So the club, just like any club around the world that collects assets that it owns on for the benefit of the members. We're building out the governance and voting and proposal side of at the moment, and so that will be a key part of that. Second thing is that we're saving up the money that we can that we earn so that we can spend it on these things. So the club treasury will be a public book as well. So the profits that we make and the expenses that we have, all with a goal to produce experiences and value for the club. So key things, the club will be able to vote on how much of the how much to spend on a car when an opportunity comes up or when a proposal comes up. And I think on the side of things of whether it's New Zealand or not, we, I'm not, I have my personal goal, which is to buy really important cars and store them in public places for the benefit of the club members and for the benefit of the car culture globally. But I'm just one person in the mix, if you get what I mean. And some people may have a different idea of what assets the club should own and how those assets should be managed. So we will be opening up to discussion and decisions around other options for that as well. So it may be that we buy a bunch of race cars that we make available at different tracks throughout the United States, or maybe that we sponsor a drifting school and members can attend that drifting school up to a certain number of members. Like you never, we don't know all the things that will be there, but the goal is to earn money as a club and vote as a club of how to buy important cars that can be preserved, and also how to add value in the car culture and the car realm to the members. One of those other things, I think we made a note the other day that we had reached an agreement with a NASCAR driver who we have agreed to sponsor her for some races, some upcoming races, and we're super excited about bringing out that full announcement and introducing her to the club and actually building on her career. And I think that's one thing that that the whole club will really get behind is, and we have opportunities to add to the motorsport culture and add to the motorsport history of and grow our brand and grow the club through those things, through real things. So I've got a vision, and I think that vision is dear to me. But I think that the whole club's vision will be the driving force behind whatever decisions are made.
Yeah, that's great. That's a lot further than just acquiring assets. That's I like that idea about getting some passes for some driving training schools and letting local members get that. That's cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
We have some questions that's been asked in the channel. Carrie, you want to read?
Yeah. Metablox just asked, wondering what the budget balance thoughts are between the digital and game dev versus IRL side of things. How we're going to balance that. Do you have any comment on that, Jeff?
No idea.
I think we'll.
Currently,
yeah.
Currently, we have invested 100% of our assets for the long term in the ASN ecosystem through Asta, because we know that is an early stage asset that's going to be super important as the decentralized intelligence protocol grows and as the games are produced and released. So we really believe that investment and that commitment will produce some amazing opportunities for us as a club going forward. We don't know how much money we're going to have as a club or how much money we're going to earn as a club. And the more money we have and the more money we earn, obviously, the more opportunities we'll have. We'll create for the club. Currently, the club's really, really well funded. We were very lucky to be sponsored by the year 2021. And we are looking forward to, we have all the money we need and all the ETH we need to produce the current program. So we're very lucky to be in that position. And I think that value will just continue to grow and those decisions will be balanced as we grow.
That's a good answer. Yeah.
I just put Brian on the stage.
Oh, Brian.
Brian.
How's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me. Thanks also, Joe. Shout out to you and Unlimited Customs. I think that's a really cool benefit of the membership. So cheers for that. My question was around, so will Atom be part of like the Fluff World, the Third Kingdom, or will it kind of be its own metaverse that's connected and interoperable with everything else?
I think what we're talking about is how we define ourselves. Is that right?
Well, try to think of like a better way to explain that. So I guess recently we just kind of found out that ASM will be its own metaverse that's kind of interoperable with everything else. Is that kind of the goal for this
I
as
think
well?
those things are like we look at it. Well, I look at it a little bit differently. Those things are the way that people describe themselves. May not be the way you experience them. If you get what I mean. The way I want to see Adam is the way that you as a member experience it, rather than how we describe ourselves as someone separate from you. Because this is a membership, not a. It's a brand. Um, you're members of that, and I think that the key, like the starting point of how I would want to describe Adam Car Club is a community rather than a server with software on it that other people have access. If you get what I mean. So all of our technology is compatible, and some of our technology is actually
Yeah, that
like the ASM brains. We're using their brains. We're using their protocols, and um, we're working really closely with NFL as well on. They actually have metaverse, um, whatever land that they've announced, which are kind of logical spaces to develop on, and we're working really closely to make sure that we can be part of that as well as as people, as community, as a club, and we are our own thing because we're a car club. And as far as that goes, if Fluff World wants to create a car club, they can create a car club, and they'll have a separate car club from us. But it's still doesn't stop us interacting with it. I mean, it's a really hard question to answer based on how you define yourself. But all of our technology is going to be really closely aligned. But our identity is what we make it because we are a community, and that's what I want to be the heart of what we do and how we do things. And I want the millions of people who play the game in the future, I want them to feel like they're part of community rather than part of a specific metaverse.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that I was subtly trying to to alpha fish there for if these would be Fluff World like Third Kingdom assets. But that was a really good answer.
Aaron laid out in the team laid out in the white paper the infrastructure required for assets to be utilized by other projects. And that, I think that kind of standard that's, that the Futureverse is creating, it's going to stop your assets that you own being siloed and it's going to become a new expectation in the NFT space. That's the new norm.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess my second question is, I think yesterday you said you can get sponsorship as a player and build a brand around your gameplay, races, cars, strategy, etc. Would a sponsorship like that come as, like a partnership that the car club has made, or would that be something where you go out and find your own sponsors?
I think you go out and find your own sponsors, but who knows? The club may want to sponsor. I think the club's more likely to want to sponsor in real life people rather than their own competition in the game. What I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. I just wasn't sure, kind of based on what you're saying earlier about how you have some major partnerships with uh, the car. I guess you didn't specify with who for the cars themselves, if that would translate to where, like teams within the car club, like specific teams could be sponsored by, one of the sponsors that you've already partnered with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it sounds really good idea. I think that what I talked about with partnerships is people contributing to the club, but and I think that in the future, like the sky is the limit. But I imagine that if a major brand wanted to sponsor something, that creator that maybe book some tracks and create a series or create a league or um, or create a event for everyone playing the game to participate in. That would be one way they could do things, and they could sponsor prizes and media and promotion around that, and that way the whole club benefits. Um, the other thing is that if you had a brand that you secured some sponsorship from, we would want to give you ways to promote that sponsor in the game and in the environment, and so that that sponsor could get value out of supporting your gaming habits. Not habits. What's a different word for that? Passion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I appreciate the answers. Thank you so much.
No worries. Good questions.
Thanks, Brian. We just got Hef on the stage.
Hi, sorry, I don't know. I assume we've got a 1 hour time limit on this, so I'll try and keep it quick. But can we say anything about what the involvement from the seekers might be, or is it a little early for that to like, do we just keep speculating? Because obviously we've seen that, there are some mechanics, there are some builders. And then with the point you raised earlier, Jeff, about, you envision people not just clicking a button and having, a library or an archive. Like, you actually have to move through the metaverse and, go pick up your parts and go look for things. And, can you send your seekers off to do things for you? Or is that kind of stuff potentially putting up barriers for people that might not be in that side of the ecosystem?
That's a really good question. We plan to have seekers as part of the game that we're developing, and we are going to make sure that it's not compulsory to have a seeker in any way. We're going to make the seeker game within ATEM Car Club game, going to make it really engaging and really a valuable asset within the game itself. It's something that helps you, but doesn't give you any unfair advantage on the track. So, on the track, it's all got to be homogelated. Everyone's got to be on the same even playing field. But in the rest of the game, and there's a lot of other parts to the game, we want to make as many opportunities for a seeker to help you out as possible.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that. And one last quick question. When IFA carts?
Soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Cool, thanks. We got BTC on stage.
Hey. Welcome to the stage.
You're on mute.
You're on mute, BTC.
Yep, sorry about
Hey.
that. Hello, thank you for bringing me up. Excited about what you guys are building. I had a question about brains. Brains are separated into parcels, A, B, C, D, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, or A, B, C, D. I forget how many parcels there are. I haven't looked. I think there's 16 parcels. Have you thought about what parcels mean for the game, different aspects of the game? Is parcel A1 going to do something specific in your game? Is the weighting in that parcel matter? Have you mapped that type of thing out through the game? Is that the direction you're thinking of?
It's actually one of the interoperable standards of ASM, which is really amazing. For brains personality, I don't know if that's the right word, but your brain's numbers in each of the little squares that it has, they are transferable across any one building on the ASM protocol. How those numbers are balanced are done by the game itself. And the benefit is that we're working with real AI here, and real AI that can learn and you can own. So, guess if you have a soccer player that kicks the ball, like in AFA, kicks the ball really hard, and he may actually, that trait may actually be fully realized in a racing car game, but it may, it's going to have a different effect than kicking a ball. It's not going to be about ball kicking. One thing that we can do, though, from a game perspective, is we can influence the weighting of each of those traits. What the traits do, and the weight, the score that each of those traits have that are stuck with the brain, that come with the brain wherever it goes. We can enhance those traits through the game engine. So you could have an asset that more efficiently utilizes the aggression trait in your brain. And not everyone may have that trait on the other asset, or that asset that improves the aggression. You may have a trait that allows more maneuverability, like a faster reflex. and the trait in the brain that relates to reflexes. You can never change that, but you may have an asset in the game that enhances the reflexes slightly and things like that. So there's a huge amount of flexibility inside the game based on the same standard. So if
Okay.
your brain's good in something on another game, it should be good at it on our game as well.
Okay. So will you have gyms like ASM is designing for some of their games where you can pay to train your brain to perform within the game?
So there will be training for ATEM racing. For any racing program that's using the ATEM asset, you'll need to train your brain.
You're saying you will need to train your brain before you race?
Training your brain is investing in the brain so that it gets
Yes.
better and more experienced and learns how to race better. But you won't have to teach your brain how to drive a car, but for it to be good at driving a car, it needs to be trained. And investing in that is something that adds value to your brain and to the career that brain has inside the game.
Okay. And so your first game, so the AFA game, David has said that there is no in-game training for the brain in the first AFA game. The only training that's available is through a gym. But it sounds like you're allowing training within game from the get-go, as well as the gym.
So we're allowing progression in the game for our brain. But training is very different. Simple way to explain it is that for a brain to learn something, it needs to do it an uncountably huge amount of times. And playing the game is not enough times for your brain to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
It would be completely insignificant, any learning that it does while playing the game. So, yeah, that's the reason for gyms.
Okay, thank you. I think that's insightful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think should we wrap up?
Yeah. I think
we should wrap up.
Yeah, it's been coming up on an hour and a half. Probably been pretty
cool.
good.
Yeah,
Thanks
that was
everyone.
a really good chat, guys.